And so as is custom with all community board meetings, that process is the same. That will not change. For those of you who may be seeing me for the first time, my name is Lenny Singletary. I serve as the chair of Community Board 2, and our vice chairs are Leonard Jordan and Barbara Zala-Gringer. As we go through the committee reports, we'll ask the chairs and co-chairs to introduce themselves, or have the chairs introduce their co-chairs. And the person who makes us tick is our wonderful secretary, Jessica Thurston. And that's her waving for those who don't know who Jessica is. And within that context, we will begin with tonight's meeting. So are there any changes or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain an approval of tonight's agenda. Barbara Zala-Gringer, second, Mr. Carlton Jordan. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes of our April 2021 exec committee meeting? If so, do you have any edits? Okay, great. Anybody who has any subsequent edits, please direct them to the board office and our secretary, and we'll make the proper adjustments. All right, let's move into agenda item number 4. Let's start with the chairperson's report. So what I really want to walk through this evening is we've had some very good and successful conversations with the Department of City Planning and with the members of Community Board 6. And so we have confirmation that our joint public hearing will take place on Thursday, June 3rd, beginning at 3:30 p.m. with an ending time of 10 p.m. Given the intention for this public hearing for the Gowanus rezoning, should there be an appetite where so many individuals would prefer to give additional commentary, I think from a virtual perspective, because this is going to be a hybrid meeting. This meeting will be virtual through a Zoom link, and then we'll also have accommodations for individuals to participate in person at Washington Park, not to be confused with the Washington Park that exists within CB2, but the Washington Park that exists within CB6. And it's at AKA JJ Byrne Park on 3rd Street between 4th and 5th Avenues. And so within that context, there's a certain period of time that DOIT will be able to accommodate an in-person virtual participation. Outside of that, you'll have to participate virtually. And so that's been ordered by the court. And so by the court regulation, we have to adhere to that perspective. And that will take place on, again, June 3rd. Registration to speak will begin at 3 p.m. and the actual hearing will start at 3:30 p.m. and end at 10. So let me just pause there to see if there's any questions. Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to keep my chairperson's report brief because I don't have time for anything else but the Gowanus rezoning. And so I'm going to take the next portion of my report and turn it over to our good friend, Mr. Dwight Smith, to give an update on the Atlantic Yards. Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. You got my report in front of you. The last meeting was short and sweet, but I really wanted to, and there's no movement on Site 5, which has been the case for quite a while because of the litigation with PC Richards. But the only real news is that there's going to be an offering, advertisements, I should say, for B4 and B15 this spring. So we're now going to be opening up the affordable units, which will be around 200 for applications. But what I really wanted to do was to sort of focus you on the slides that I've added from what you saw in last month's report, which was the presentation to the city council candidates and community for districts 33, 35, and 39. And then I want to also, I think by now we should have a pretty good sense of what the status is at the yards. Back in November, you heard from the Empire State Development folks and the developer, who walked us through a slideshow of what was happening at the 4 construction sites that are going on now: B4, B15, B12, and B13. And then in that report that I gave or sent to you in April was Brooklyn Speaks information that traced the history of the development of the project since 2006, when it was first started and was supposed to have been completed in 2016. It outlined the promised commitments that were negotiated with the community. And if you remember, those commitments represented landmark developments. That is, we got the 30% of affordable units for the development approved. And then that report described the status of those commitments to date. And that's what we should focus on. But to recap, 2,250 units are supposed to be completed by 2025. So far, 35% of them have been, about 782 units. Under construction now in the 4 apartment towers that are going up are 590 units. So when completed in spring of 2023, and that's because the sites 12 and 15 will be completed then. Having mentioned though that 4 and 15 are going to be occupied, will start to be occupied this summer, we will have 61% of the units done. That leaves so 1,300 will be completed by that point, and we've got 878 units, or 39% of them, that remain to be constructed. Now, most of those units are going to be part of the 6 apartment towers that are to be constructed on the platform. That'll be built over the rail yards. And the start of that construction is already 2 years behind schedule, and we still have no effective start date. I've continued to report that the final decision is in the hands of LIRR. There's apparently a great deal of administrative work to be done, or administrative sign-offs to be had, and that's what's holding up things now. But that's the problem. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to complete all of those additional 878 units in the next 4 years, primarily because once the construction of the platform is approved and undertaken, that's going to take 3 years. The apartment buildings typically take 3 years. Now, what the developers say is that because the foundations for the platform are already in place, that you can build both the platforms, which will be built in 2 stages, can be built in concert with the apartment buildings. So B6 and B7 will be the 2 100% affordable apartment buildings going up that'll get us close, perhaps, to that number, but we really don't know when all of that's going to start. And so that's the reason that Brooklyn Speaks did its presentation to the council candidates and sent to the governor its concerns that, given where we are, kind of in this real pause with no new construction in place, that we really need to rethink what's happening. And that goes to the fact that when you look at the what the distribution of the units has been for the 783 that are already affordable, the lion's share of those are for families whose incomes are 130% or more. As you can see, it's the bottom two lines there, where really most of the units are designed for folks at the 165% of median. And so the first ask that Brooklyn Speaks has for the governor is that let's focus now on providing the units for the low and very low income. That is to say, the 40 to 60% of median folks, and get those in place. And what they've said is also, there we go, that until 75% of the projects, affordable units have been completed, any of the new construction really needs to have at least 25% of its units as permanently affordable and deeply subsidized. That is the 40 to 60% of medians. The issue with Site 5, of course, it's not moving in any event, but what the concern is that we need to make sure that this presumably 80-story building is going to somehow integrate contextually with the row houses of the Pacific Street, which are just behind it, in some sort of way. And then we need subway improvements, things that we've talked about for the longest, particularly think of 80 Flatbush, where that's going to create yet more incredible density. That project, as you know, is underway, although it doesn't seem to be moving very fast. The site has been cleared. There seems to be just a very tiny bit of activity, but that's going to create a lot of density. And we didn't provide for subway improvements there. We tried to get it in, that didn't happen. So it becomes really important that when we do this Site 5, yet another 80-story building, that there is indeed some subway improvements that'll accommodate what is going to be massive overcrowding. And then I've talked previously about the problem with Site B15. That's at Pacific, where we've got the school, but where the school is also where you've got the fire department and NYPD at the same in the same place. And the concern is, how do we deal with public safety there? That is yet another official concern of Brooklyn Speaks. Additionally, permitted parking spaces for the 5-block area around Barclays. And then finally, the thing that we've worked on for quite a while is getting that special enforcement district, which the community has bought into, as did Brooklyn Speaks. And so it's now an official element on Brooklyn Speaks calendar or agenda with the state. Remember, it was Brooklyn Speaks who really, through a threatened legal action back in 2014, got the city to kind of commit to the 2025 completion date for the units. Brooklyn Speaks backed off the lawsuit, but here we are with basically 35% of the units done, and 2025 is around the corner. We're not going to get this stuff completed by then, and there clearly is going to have to be an amendment to the general plan to allow for whatever the developers come up with as what they believe to be the next date that they can hit the target for these additional 878 units. And I'm not aware that we have gotten any response from the governor's office yet. But that's really the update. You've seen the pictures of what things look like for the sites that are under construction, except what the pictures that the ESD showed didn't show that B4 and B, and I'm sorry, I'm losing my place. That B4 and B15, no, 412 are almost completed. But just to recap, the good news is we've got at least 200 coming online in the next in this summer, and then we've got 300 or so more coming on in by the spring of 2023, and after that, it's a guess of when we'll even get started on the balance. So with that, I'll, if there are questions, I'll try to answer them. But this is moving along much more slowly than planned. The developers point to the problems, with COVID and that sort of stuff, which is really very true. Things slowed down, but really the issue is sign-offs from the railroad on allowing the developer to start construction of the platform on which the balance of these affordable units are going to be built. Because on that platform are going to be 6 apartment towers, the first 2 of which will be 100% affordable.
So as always, Mr. Smith, thank you for giving us the update with all of the context and the details that you do. You've been our representative for some time now, and there's been no degradation in your report. It's always thorough and always complete. So I wanted to take a moment to thank you for that. Under the context of Mr. Smith asking for questions, I'll start with Ms. Thurston.
Thanks, Lenny. Thank you, Dwight. It's so helpful to get these updates because I'm always so overwhelmed by the information about this project.
Right. And I hope it clarifies it a little bit. It sort of brings it all together.
It's a lot, but it does. And especially seeing this list of issues, I'm curious if you think there's a role for us to play in highlighting some of these calls to the governor. I mean, I'll share that the affordable housing is so problematic. But I also wonder if we can be even more specific about, this really is probably more for the transportation committee, but about what we'd want to see specifically improved at this stop. Because in addition to the subway being overwhelmed there, I'm very concerned about how incredibly unsafe it will be for pedestrians. And I know that's come up in a lot of different ways, but I'm just curious if you've heard of ways that we could either as individuals or as the board weigh in and echo some of these calls or make them more specific.
We haven't talked about that, but
okay.
When we have our next Brooklyn Speaks Coalition meeting, I'll bring that up. And to the extent that transportation has specific ideas, I'd like to just proactively bring those forward and say, okay, fine. Look, this is what CB2's Transportation Committee has been thinking about with regards to how the subway interest might be approved. And these are the kinds of things that they've come up with that we want to put on the table for consideration.
Sure. And I don't want to speak for Juliet and Sid. I just wonder what the right way is to approach it. Thank you.
Okay. But in addition, what I will also ask in a more general sort of way is, what does the coalition think ought to be the role of CB2 just in general in signing? If you're supportive of the asks that they've come up with, is a letter from the board, will that be useful? And to the extent that that is, and I think it will be, I think what we'd like to say is then, why don't we try to get similar kind of letters from the other community boards, 6 and 2 as well.
Yeah.
So let me make this suggestion. I think the question is a fair one. And before we go to other questions, because I saw Juliet had her hand up, of late, all of our committees by the nature of the fact that there's so many things that cross through those topics, are inundated with a lot of things that need to be dealt with, and particularly the Transportation and Public Safety Committee. I mean, just those two items alone are worthy of just an hour, 2 hours of each issue. It would be helpful, at least for me, and I'm going to make this suggestion on behalf of the executive committee, if there would be some level of what an agenda item would look like with about no more than 3 bullet points, so that at least if this is something that transcends multiple committees, we're all addressing the same questions and getting the right feedback. Because what I don't want to do is have things go all in a different process. I think uniformity here is helpful, given that we're taking a collective perspective from the community board, and I want to make sure that the voice is something that's not overlooked. So if Mr. Smith, you, myself, and Caroline, Taya, Gustavo, the office could work to get through that, I think that would be helpful, and then makes us, give better use of the committee.
Okay, so so I'm clear. So the notion would be sending to sending to the coalition 3 kind of things that we would be concerned about, because we're concerned about the deep subsidies, the 40 to 60% of median, more interest there, more interest in the subway safety and access issues, and whatever else. And then we just send a set of recommendations from the board to the coalition for review, consideration.
So let me rephrase that differently. How you started off with the involvement of the coalition, perfect.
Okay.
What I would ask is that once you get that document, send it to myself, and we can share it as an agenda item for the respective committees, and then they can begin to formulate what a recommendation or what support would look like, so that collectively Community Board 2 can vote on what that support should be.
Got it.
I want to try to frame it in a way that is consistent, and that hopefully have it go all over the place, put a little more structure to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you could do that, that would be really helpful.
Will do. And I'll circle back with you guys, and to make sure I get things right when I go to the coalition, and tell them this is what we want to look at, and then have them the coalition respond.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Juliet?
I'll save my comments for the committee discussion.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Sydney, is that a second? Okay, good. I got you. Thumbs up. I got it. I wasn't sure you were thumbing up or you were doing your Phil Mickelson impersonation, but I got it. Okay. All right. And there goes that dog. I love that dog. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda, committees for board action. We'll start with, actually, wait, before I do that, before I move to agenda item number 5, I want everyone to start thinking that typically it's been our practice that during the months of July and August, we typically take a recess, and then we take a vote and a motion. We put forth a motion and take a vote, so that the executive committee acts on behalf of the general body. We will probably do the same again this year. We probably will not have the luxury of having July and August off, so you should anticipate that we would probably have to have one of those months where we come together, but don't want us to lose sight of that. So as you start to think through that now, just be prepared that we may need to act in that fashion going forward. And then the other thing that everyone should be aware of, and just mention that, is we anticipate that any moment now we'll get the distribution from Borough Hall about who our new board members will be. And then we also know that some board members have done an excellent job of service and that are stepping down. So you should anticipate some level of change there. I just also want to reiterate that so everyone is aware of that as well. So that too will require me to work with the board office, which we will, to get that addressed as well. So just a little housekeeping there. Now with that, let me move to agenda item number 5, committees for action. The first committee up is Health, Environment, and Social Services.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brandon Smith. I'm the chair of the Health, Environment, Social Services Committee. We currently do not have a vice chair. However, Secretary Jessica Thurston, who's also secretary of the board, does an excellent job of supporting us, and I could not manage the committee effectively without her. I'm going to dive into each of my updates for this month. We've got I shouldn't say updates, they're agenda items here for action. We had 5 liquor licenses which we approved, and I'll say from a big picture perspective, there was no community opposition from any members of the community who came to speak against any of these liquor licenses, which we approved entirely unanimously. But we had a number of discussions about particularly outdoor seating at this meeting, and we limited several of the hours in the course of these discussions. So diving in, first item up was 345 Adams Street, which is going to be the Holy Ground and Fox Club. This is located right where the Hill Country Barbecue used to be, and this is another barbecue restaurant, downtown Brooklyn, right there on the corner of Willoughby and Adams Street / Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard. It's a full-service restaurant. On the first floor, the second floor is going to be a cocktail lounge that will hold private events. There's absolutely no residences anywhere around this particular establishment. But we had some discussion, particularly around the outdoor seating. Their hours inside are going to be 11 a.m. to 4 a.m. every day, 2 a.m. close on the ground floor. Outdoors, we felt it appropriate to have hours of 11 p.m. close on Sunday to Thursday and 12 a.m. close on Friday and Saturday. Having heard that and the course of the presentation and their commitment to local hiring, we approved them 800. Next up, we've got 55 Water Street. We should be very familiar with this address because we've heard a number of different establishments that have come out of 55 Water Street, the Empire Stores location. But this, I think, was the first one that actually had outdoor seating proposed. This location is called Purple Fete. It's going to be a wine bar located in the former J. Crew space, which is now vacant. Total occupancy is 65. There's a separate wine store that's going to be nearby, but not part of the same application. They're planning to make some charitable donations to the community. We spoke mostly about the outdoor seating because while there's no residences in the building, there are residences across the street and sort of diagonal from this location. So we're able to get an agreement from the applicants to have the outdoor seating close 10 p.m. on Sunday to Wednesday and 11 p.m. on Thursday through Saturday. And the indoor is going to close at midnight Sunday to Thursday and 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. Having heard all of that, we approve the application by margin of 800. Next up, we've got 1039A Fulton Street. 1039A Fulton Street is located between Gates and Classen on Fulton Street. This is going to be a coffee and pastry shop that's going to be open till 10 p.m. every day. There is a backyard, and there are some neighbors, but the applicants have spoken with them and there are no concerns about the backyard. They're ADA compliant. They're going to employ 5 people. We approve the application by a margin of 800. Next up, we've got 491 Atlantic Avenue. This is going to be between Nevins and 3rd on Atlantic Avenue, north side of the street, where the name of the prior establishment is like La Flor de Paradiso, something like that. It was a different restaurant. This location is going to be a Mexican place. What's interesting is you all may know the restaurant Bacchus, which is a little bit farther down on Atlantic Avenue, closer to Bond Street. And during the pandemic, the restaurant shut down, and there was some news about how the kitchen staff had opened up their own establishment offering delivery, and that's what became this establishment, El Zazon. So now they're moving off to their own location a little bit of the ways down the street. And they had come in with a proposal to close at, there's no outdoor seating for this one, but they came in with a proposal to close at 2 a.m. on Sunday to Wednesday and 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. But because of the protocols, they were unable to ask any of the residents of the building about for signatures or support. And we didn't really feel comfortable with having such a late closing time, given that there were residents and the fact that it didn't appear they'd been consulted, although there's nobody appeared in opposition to this application. Overall, we agreed that they could close because they were particularly interested in late night food with a 1 a.m. closing time 7 days a week. And with that concession, we approved the application by a margin of 800. Finally, our fifth location is 187 Court Street, Anarchy Burger, DBA Blue Collar. This is on the corner of Court and Congress. What's the other street here? Got to move my zoom over a little bit. Bergen, yes. So this is a burger place, as you might assume. It's taking over the spot of a different burger place. They're aiming to offer mostly takeout and delivery, but also some service, and they have some outdoor seating there on the street. They have existing soundproofing. We again had another a long discussion about the outdoor seating. We agreed on 11 p.m. for Sunday to Thursday and 12 midnight on Friday and Saturday. With that discussion, we agreed to approve the application by a margin of 800. So that's all 5 applications. I would just note one other thing. As we normally do, we approved all of the renewals by a margin of 800. However, we heard some community complaints, or the board office got some community complaints after the committee meeting on 216 Duffield Street. So I would ask to hold that one back over for a future committee meeting so that we can have the applicants come in and talk about the community concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Typically, when we have uniformity in the recommendation from the committee, we take them all as one. But let me ask to see if there's any objection to a motion to accept all of the applicants that have been presented by the Health, Environment, and Social Services Committee. Barbara, you're on mute.
I have a question about the timing on one of these applications.
Actually, before you do that, before you ask that question, let me just get the answer to my first question first. Does anybody object, or is your question related to an objection?
Yeah, it's just, I have a concern about the hours for the Purple Fet.
Okay, so before we answer that, let's pull that one out.
Okay.
We'll pull Purple Fet out. Are there any others that we want to pull out?
It's Dorothea. I have a question about the hours for El Sazon.
Okay, so we're going to pull out Purple Fet, El Zazon. Any other ones? Okay, great. So let me do this. Let me entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation for the file. Mr. Jordan?
Yes. Motion to accept the committee's recommendation on the other 3.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Second, Ms. Smith. I mean, Ms. Zalagringer, I'm sorry. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? So moved, thank you. All right, let's take the first item. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation for Purple Fet at 55 Water Street.
So moved.
Mr. Jordan, second by Mr. Gordon. Is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Zalagringer?
Yes, I was a little concerned about the hours for this establishment. They seem kind of on the early side. And I was wondering what the hours for the other establishments near it are? 10 and 11 seem kind of early.
So there are two different sets of hours to speak about here. There's the indoor hours and the outdoor hours. And
Right.
I think the indoor hours are 12 midnight and 1 a.m. The outdoor hours are 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. I think part of the reason why we wanted to focus on having a bit in the way of early outdoor hours is because out of the other locations at 55 Water Street really don't have outdoor seating. And there are residences directly across the street from this who we could not consult with and there were no signatures that were gathered because of the COVID-19 restrictions. So thinking all those things through and trying to adopt a more considerate standard to neighborhoods that have dense residential populations. Particularly, we've heard a lot of concerns expressed from residents in that particular neighborhood about the level of traffic on the streets and about the level of noise that they have to deal with on a daily basis. Given that there was going to be that exposure, having somewhat early hours, I think we thought was the most pragmatic thing to do. And the applicant can always come back and try to request later hours if there is no concern. At the same time, and there was nobody there at the meeting who expressed opposition to it either. But all things considered, that was what we came to. And I hope that answers your question.
Well, did you look at any of the hours of the surrounding restaurants?
Okay, so I think as I indicated, on the particular block where this location was, there were no other restaurants that had outdoor seating. So I think from the perspective of the indoor hours, they did appear consistent with other restaurants that were in the area, and we didn't have a problem with that. But for the outdoor seating, that wasn't necessarily the same consideration.
Were the restaurateurs concerned about the limitation on the hours?
I think every restaurateur is concerned about having potential business that they couldn't have taken advantage of, and I don't particularly remember any concern that was expressed by these particular applicants. But I certainly don't blame them for that if they do.
Thanks, Brandon.
Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, just a comment. I think that was a wise decision by the committee because that street is extremely narrow. And like I said, there's residential, what do you call it, apartments, right across the street from there. And certainly it's not a wide distance. So certainly outside seating, as far as noise and traffic and everything else would be, I think it was a good decision to keep in mind the people that live on that block.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you. The next item for motion would be El Zazon at 491 Atlantic Avenue. I entertain a motion for the committee's recommendation. Mr. Jordan, can I get a second by Mr. Gordon? Is there any discussion on the motion? Ms. Thompson Manning?
Yes, I just want to make sure I heard correctly. I believe that's the one that you said they wanted from Sunday to Wednesday, they wanted hours from to 2 a.m. And then the other part of the week, they wanted hours till 3 a.m. And I believe you said that the committee decided that you were okay with Sunday through Wednesday for 1 a.m. Is that correct?
Oh, almost. We actually agreed on 1 a.m. 7 days a week for this location.
Oh, because I was going to ask you what did you agree on for the
For
rest
the
of the
other
week?
days, yeah. That
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense
So
if that's what you're thinking, but
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I missed. So it's going to be to 1 a.m. every day.
correct.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Okay, great. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? So moved. Thank you, Mr. Smith. That concludes the committee's report, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. Next committee for action, land use.
Thank you very much, Lenny. Okay,
Welcome.
we have a couple of Landmark Preservation Commission applications from the Landmark Land Use Committee. Irene Janner is our co-chair. Also, Daughtry Christophen's also co-chair, although Daughtry is not able to make it tonight. And I'm Carlton Gordon. We have two Landmark Certificate Appropriateness applications, and we approved them both. The first one is 89 Remsen Street in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. And the application is to change the entire sidewalk from bluestone to concrete. This one did find a little bit of a contretemps, but we wound up approving it. This one, yeah, again, it's a fight over bluestone. Bluestone is, for me, you're not familiar with, it's sort of, I guess, really more of a grayish color, but it's called bluestone. And it can break. It's historic. It's normally part of the, the fabric of a lot of historic districts, including Brooklyn Heights and downtown. But it's also difficult for repairing. And the owner had asked that it just be simply put over into concrete, and they might be able to dye it a bit, but they feel that the concrete would last a lot longer. The Brooklyn Heights Association, especially through Judy Stanton and Irene Janner, had opposed it. They are very much into keeping bluestone throughout the neighborhood, and it's something that's understandable. Bluestone is, again, part of the historic fabric of these buildings. However, we felt that it was still of a concern that we could not keep it going on this one. We were not, and we did have a first motion to disapprove that was brought by Judy and Irene. That motion was turned down 2-7. So then we entered into a second motion to approve the application, and that application was approved 7-1-1. Now, we did have discussion. Again, Carolyn Church was very helpful on this discussion as we were trying to figure out, could the bluestone be replaced by the concrete? And Carolyn Church looked up on the department, I think it's Department of Transportation regulations, in section 10-7 I have here, that would allow for the repair to be done with concrete. So we did approve that one, like I said, 7-1-1. The second application was at 70 Hudson Avenue in the Vinegar Hill Historic District. And the application is to maintain clapboard siding at the facade, cladding at a proposed new rear balcony. And then they would revise the clapboard siding to match the existing facade at the roof. Also be doing at the roof, bulkhead windows and rear windows, slightly modifying roof railing, reduce the line with the deck, and also, what did I have here? Yes, and at the residential entry, including bluestone threads and bulb light. This one we had approved 8-1-1. We had actually, and I didn't remember it, the applicant said this committee approved it, about more than 10 years ago. And for some reason, the owner did not pick up on doing much of the work. So now they've actually been able to come together. I guess they got the financing and the wherewithal to do the work. We liked it and we approved it, like I said, 8-1-0. And we ask for your approval at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Again, let me just ask for the purpose of efficiency. Are there any concerns with taking the committee's recommendation both as presented, or do we want to break these two items out? Hearing no. Yes, sir.
I'm trying, I would prefer to do them separately. I think the Bluestone is an important thing to keep in Brooklyn Heights.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation for 89 Ransom Street.
That's the Bluestone one. Okay.
Ms. Thurston, can I get a second? Mr. Jordan, any discussion on the motion?
And just what I just said. I mean, I think in Brooklyn Heights, well, they have really tried to keep the Bluestone, and they've also tried to, where they can, to keep cobblestone. And I think that making that change will open it up for lots and lots of changes throughout the entire area.
Ms. Thurston?
Clarification, Carlton.
Yeah.
Bluestone right now, did the applicant indicate that the way that the Bluestone is falling apart is dangerous or inaccessible? Like, is it difficult for folks with mobility challenges?
They didn't indicate that, but it's difficult for repairing. Yeah. And it's also, Bluestone is a little tricky, especially when it's wet.
Right.
Okay. It's a lovely material, right, but it's not the best material.
Right.
And it's, again, difficult for repairing, difficult for maintaining.
Yeah.
Yes, we'd like to, the feeling is that we want to keep the historic fabric as much as possible, but this one just was not, it couldn't continue, and it's difficult to deal with. So that's why we would prefer the Bluestone. In this instance, we're going to say, we'll give the owner the opportunity to try to make a proper repair. Ultimately, in a sidewalk, you want to have a safe surface on the sidewalk.
I agree.
Any other discussion on the motion? Ms. Dorothea Thompson-Manning.
Yes, my question is, did the person indicate that they cannot obtain the Bluestone? Or is it just that the committee went on the fact that it causes some other issues? Or is it obtainable? Was that asked?
Well, we only spoke to we actually spoke with the application was delivered by the contractor, and the contractor said this is the best they could do.
But it's available. It's just expensive. I mean,
hold on. Dorothea,
which is true. It is an expensive.
Wait, Carlton, wait. We're not gonna do this. Stop.
Okay.
Dorothea, was your question answered?
Not really, because he says that the contractor says this was the best he could do. My question is whether or not anyone said that they cannot obtain the Bluestone, therefore they're going with something else. And I don't think I heard an answer to that particular question.
All right, so Carlton, before you answer, yes or no? Was that asked?
No, it's not asked.
Okay, great. So that's a no.
May I speak? Irene Janner.
Go ahead, Ms. Shannon.
Yeah, he had indicated the whole sidewalk is in terrible condition and the whole section needs to be replaced. And he indicated it was the expense, not necessarily that the material wasn't available, it was the cost.
Okay, while I find that helpful, yeah, I think the answer to your question, Ms. Manning, is that it wasn't asked.
It wasn't asked.
So it can't give you an answer.
Yeah, because I know you can obtain it, and that's why I was very careful with the question that I asked. But when I listened to what Carlton is saying about the repairs and the safety, but like no one asked. I mean, that's all. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Mr. Sala?
Mr. Chairman, I know I'm not an executive committee member, but I do live in the Heights, and Bluestone is all over the Heights. And as far as being safe when it's raining, I think it's been here for years. I would echo Sid's objection. I think that the Bluestone should remain prime focus for Brooklyn Heights renovation. It's been all over the Heights. It'll open it up to other issues. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the committee's recommendation? Opposed? Abstentions? You got that, Jessica? All right, great. Committee recommendation passes. Next item, 70 Hudson Street. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation. Ms. Juliet Cullen Chung, a second, please. Ms. Barbara Zala-Greener. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next committee to report, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a very busy meeting. Unusual, we have 3 items for action. Before I start that, I just wanted to mention that we did have Parks Commissioner Marty Marr there, and he gave us an update on capital projects, and there are a number of projects that are now underway, but as you can imagine, and as we reported before, many of these projects are delayed because of the delays of COVID. Brings us to Fort Greene Park. As you know, Fort Greene Park is a controversial issue. This has been the subject, the proposal that is pending on Fort Greene Park has been subject to a court proceeding, and the court has ordered that there be an environmental assessment statement performed for this project. Now, the commissioner said this statement is is not a full-blown environmentally impact statement study, but they will be hiring an independent contractor to do this study, who will then issue a report as to whether there is any environmental impact. And that report will be made public. It will be going to the mayor, to the borough president, to the community board. So we specifically would like the person who writes that report to come back to our committee. There's a lot of concern on the committee about Fort Greene Park and this project. Now, what we were asked to vote on is not the project that has been subject to the court proceeding. In order to do this assessment statement, apparently you need more than, I believe it's more than 10 acres. And so the project that is already been approved by the community board is under 10 acres. So they've added this West Park landscape to the project. They've gotten some more money to do this. And what they're going to be doing really is replacing in kind and addressing some erosion. If we go back to that slide right before, Taya, thanks, this one. This area that is to the west of the monument is the area that's at issue. There's going to be path work and also some addressing drainage and erosion. There's really nothing new here. It's just really, as you can see by this slide, that there is a lot of, and all of it looks like this pretty much. It's not good to walk on. It's problematic, and that's what they're going to be replacing. So the vote is really to approve, and there's a temporary path here that you can see, which apparently should have been there initially, but wasn't, but people walk there anyway. So it will be creating that path so that people can actually walk on it. And you can see some more of this breakage here around that will be addressed, as I said, also erosion and drainage. So that is what we voted on. And the vote to approve that project was 8-0. So that's what we are asking for your approval on, our recommendation here. And there will be 4 trees removed as part of this process here, but there will be 20 new ones added. And again, this is on just one side of the monument. And will create access to it where it was a challenge beforehand.
Robert, don't you have 2 other things you want to go through?
Oh, you want me to go through all 3 of them at once?
Yeah, like everybody else.
Oh,
We'll just go
okay.
through 'em.
All right, not a problem. The second one, that's the most, well, that's a challenge, that one. The next one is a green playground. As you may remember, we spoke about the visioning scoping session done a few months ago about this playground. There are funds that were obtained by the councilwoman to do this work. Let me just get my other page out. 1 second. And this is a lovely playground, which was in need of work. I think it was constructed in the 1950s, so a lot of it is outdated, worn out. And really, as you can see from the schematic, they're going to be reconstructing the playground. There are open tree pits, which they're going to expand. They're creating a welcoming entrance. This playground is adjacent to a school. There are going to be new trees planted. They're going to replace the water fountain, put in an ADA approved fountain. They're going to put in a new flagpole. They are going to have designated play areas for children ages 2 to 5 and then 5 to 12, including swings. There are swings for both ages. They're going to be using earth tone colors. They will be lowering the height of the fence, and so again here our committee approved this design 8-0. And as I say, this design is based on the scoping session that was held several months ago, and that was very well attended. Then the third item we have is concerns the green area at Willoughby Square. Now, in 2019, the community board, I believe it came through the YECA committee at that time, the community board approved the naming of this as Abolitionist Place Park. Now, the Economic Development Corporation came to our meeting, I believe it was in March, and told us that it could not be named a park because this is not land that is overseen by the Parks Department. This is, as you can see in this letter that the Economic Development recently sent to the board, that this land is not in the jurisdiction of the Department of Parks and Recreation. Therefore, it cannot have the title park in it. Well, this was a very controversial issue. The committee was very torn by this, people feeling they had been promised this was going to be called a park and that there was no reason in their perspective that should change. Again, Economic Development said they had consulted with the Law Department of New York City and the Parks Department. Marty Marr spoke very briefly. He just to this when he spoke and really just said, Parks has no jurisdiction over this, the Parks Department. So we had an initial vote to just vote to keep the name basically, and that vote did not pass. So we had another motion. We talked about several names of this area, and it was suggested that we call it Abolitionist Place because I suggested that that sounded more, had more gravitas even than calling it Abolitionist Park. And right now, the proposal is that either side of this street would be called Abolitionist Place West, Abolitionist Place East. And the both the representative from the Downtown Alliance and the Economic Development Corporation said there'd be no problem with naming the streets and this green area with the same name. And I don't know about the rest of you, but we've been hearing about this green space for so many years. It's gone through so many iterations. And I, for one, am eager to sit in this green area. And I think, there'll be a plaque about Abolitionist Place. There's been, there's already an artist for some art, which we've talked about before. And this is an artist who deals with words. So, so our committee, as it was a divided vote, it was 5-1 to 2, but it was approved that we suggested that it be called Abolitionist Place. As I said, we were given every indication that it could not be called a park.
Is there any objection to taking all of the committee recommendation at once, or is there a preference to break them out? Hearing no response, I'll entertain a motion to accept all 3 items recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Mr. Chair, Bill Flittoy, I make that motion to accept all 3 as recommended by the park.
Second.
Second, Mr. Gordon. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
I think Jessica had a question.
I'm sorry, I had a very quick question. I just was curious if members of the community attended that meeting and had thoughts on calling it place or park.
Well, there was a very long meeting, and as you can imagine, we had a very good attendance. I think we had about 60 people, but most of the concern was geared towards Fort Greene Park.
Okay.
And I have to tell you, because I was watching the number of participants, and by the time we got to this issue at about 9 o'clock, I would say there weren't that many people in addition to the committee members who were very concerned about it. Yeah.
Totally fair.
Okay.
Thanks, Barbara. I'm sorry,
Sure.
we can call the question.
That's all right.
Okay.
Is there any, one more time before we call the question, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Next item, agenda item number 6, committees to report. First is economic development and employment.
Well, Chair Singletary, I'm currently on a cell phone and I don't have bandwidth to actually have my video. I apologize for that. Okay, I gave my full report at the board meeting. I have nothing to add to that, no new developments. I do wish people attend the next Economic Development and Employment Committee, which I believe will be the 3rd of June. I'm not sure of that. I don't have my calendar in front of me. But that will be discussing the, what's called the statement of district needs at that point in time. And we'll also have one presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next committee to report, transportation and public safety.
Good evening. I'm Juliet Cullen Chung, Chair of the Transportation and Public Safety Committee. Cheryl Gelbs is the Vice Chair, and Sydney Meyer is the Future Chair. Our meeting was just last Thursday, so the minutes were not yet distributed. We had a very educational and informative meeting with the Center for Court Innovation. They presented their major programs that included the Red Hook Community Court System, which we had previously learned about last August with Mr. Brandon Smith and a social justice activist. And now we heard from the actual operator of the Red Hook Community Court. We also heard about their program a Brooklyn Justice Initiative, which is taking a lot of the diversion and alternative to incarceration ideas that were developed in the community court system into the criminal court system. So that was very interesting too. The Red Hook Community Court acts as a laboratory for testing these ideas of connecting people with social services instead of incarceration, diverting people from traditional sentencing into these alternative resources that then they can expand upon, not only in New York City, but really they participate nationally in these policy setting initiatives. They talked about their peacemaking program, which pairs people from the community, trains people from the community to address, hold people accountable, really. So when there are disputes in the community, rather than entering the court system, they enter like almost a Native American inspired peacemaking program. They talked about their driver accountability program, where they are taking low-level vehicular offenses, and rather than fining people or giving jail time to people, they put them into a facilitated conversation where they actually train them and have discussions with them to improve their awareness about the consequences of dangerous driving. That has since been expanded to the criminal court system as well. We heard about how their supervised release program has been expanding since the 2019 bail reform legislations that passed. So they have serviced 10,000 people with supervised release instead of those people having to put up money for bail. And we heard about their activities targeting young people, 18 to 24-year-olds, entering into a specialized court where they get case managers and social workers to help them with job readiness, employment, and other needs, maybe even art therapy, mental health therapy, to really divert them from the criminal justice system, to give them the resources to be able to reduce the future possibility of offending. So we had a really great conversation with them and learned a lot. We then talked about, how we might be able to implement some of these ideas for Community District 2, because the community court idea was one of our top statement of district needs. It was really good to understand that, well, a lot of those ideas did enter into the Brooklyn Criminal Court, and we are being serviced by a lot of those initiatives. But there were some suggestions that we can incorporate into our statement of district needs that we'll continue to review in the next coming meetings until the fall. We then talked about our statement of district needs a little bit more broadly before concluding the meeting.
You sure, Juliet? That's it?
I think so. Pretty long. It was important. It felt like it was really great to get this information. So I really did want to share what they know.
Agreed. Any questions for transportation and public safety? Great. Again, thank you.
Thank you.
Next committee to report, Youth Education and Cultural Affairs.
Hi, I'm going to just report on our upcoming meeting. Youth Education and Cultural Affairs is going to have a joint meeting with, Health, Environment, and Social Services.
And what is your name?
And I'm so sorry, Dorothea Thompson Manning. I didn't expect to report.
I can tell. That's why I'm helping you out. I got you. Teamwork.
Okay, so anyhow, yes. And I'm the co-chair of the committee. Betty Fibers, the committee chair, is not on the line tonight. Anyhow, the meeting, as I said, will be held with another committee. And it's the title is going to be Decreasing Childhood Asthma in CB2. And so that'll be Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. That's my report. That's all I have.
Thank you. I encourage everyone who has the ability to participate in the meeting to do so. Asthma is a serious issue that affects many communities, including CB2. And it's the type of information that, independent of whether or not you are a parent or have engagement with young children or adults, it's the type of information you want to be aware of and share to your respective networks and communities. So to the extent that you can advise people to come out and participate, or to the extent that we can participate and bring back the information, it is strongly encouraged.
Could I add
Moving on.
something to that? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Just because our committee's partnering on that issue, I'm sorry to cut in, but the idea that we're having for the meeting on Wednesday is to really get a project in place with where we hope to get commitments from the Department of Education to implement education and treatment services for people who have asthma, as well as parents and staff who might be in positions to recognize children who have asthma. And the goal of this meeting is going to be really sort of project focused, to kind of speak about that with some key stakeholders who've come and presented in the past, as well as with actual representatives from Department of Education. Very excited to participate in it and very grateful to the Youth Education and Cultural Affairs Committee for partnering with us. Thanks.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, other committee business. So one of the things I want to just communicate with everyone, and this is necessarily something that doesn't fall under my committee report, but just want to make sure that we're aware of. Part of what I'm trying to do is, you see through some of the actions that you all have allowed me to make as the chair and in support with your votes, is set up each of our committees through some form of succession planning and make sure that we have a robust leadership so that the burden is equally shared. It's not placed on one individual. It does not fall short on me that each of us do this with the only compensation being passion and appreciation for our respective committees. And so what I try to manage is that this does not turn into something that is more challenging than our day jobs or the things that we get compensated for. Even those of you who had the opportunity to be retired, whatever you get your pension or your Social Security, you put in work at a job. I wouldn't want this to be more difficult than that. So that's what I'm trying to do. However, that does not mean that I'm looking to do that for every committee. I'm trying to be specific in how we do this. And so if when a request comes and I'm not supporting it, it doesn't mean that I'm anti. It just means that I'm trying to manage where we have the greatest area to strengthen the committee, and also making sure that I have enough individuals to participate. One of the things that I'd like to see is greater participation from all of the board members, and so that as on top of being named to a committee, that they participate in a committee. And so to that extent, if you could help us, meaning the executive committee, which we're all a part of, get out the word that participation is the key to sharing the load and the success, that would be great. I mean, it's a shame to have a maximum of 50 members eligible on the board of the community board, I should say, and all 50 are not participating. So we want to try to encourage more greater participation, one. Number two, over the next few months, I plan on working closely with our parliamentarian, Mr. John Quint, and also getting some advice and some counsel from Corporation Counsel to make sure that some of the things that we're doing is in line and best practice with what is expected of other community boards. I just believe in structure and consistency. And so to the extent that we can get some baseline on what things look like, there are certain things that we do as a board that are governed by our bylaws. There are other things that we do that are governed by the city charter. And then there are a few things that are kind of in the gray area. I just want to try to get more clarity on what those gray area topics are. So more to come on that as we continue to have our meeting and engage. I'll be looking to report more information on how we just review what we're doing, see if it fits, or if there's an opportunity to take in line best practice from what some of our other committee structures are doing, or either what other community boards are doing. I don't think anyone has a monopoly on right. So there's an opportunity to get better, we will. And last but not least, as we continue to move on to our June calendar with the many things that are coming up, if you haven't done so, take a minute to just appreciate the work that you've done, what you've done for yourself. A year ago, this time, I think in June is when we were finally just kind of getting back together. Things were a little tough, but we were slowly trying to get back together. We were definitely getting the office back where it needs to be. And so when you think back, just looking over a year from last Memorial Day to this Memorial Day, we've accomplished a lot. So we should be proud, but let's take a minute to take care of our respective selves, check on your wellness. For some reason, the year went fast, but don't forget to take time to check on yourself and make sure we're ready for the upcoming summer. And then we get ready for the winter months, and as we resume with a reconvening in September. So not that this is our last meeting, but it was top of mind. I wanted to make sure I communicated that to everyone on the phone. With that being said, do we have any community members as we move into agenda item number 8 for a community forum?
Yes.
Hey, John.
Good evening, Community Board 2. I have a couple of follow-ups to report very quickly. In 2004, you may recall we negotiated an upzoning of Community Board 2, the downtown area. It's pretty big, and it included some community benefits. If I could briefly give you a portion of the community benefits, it is that every train station be made ADA compliant. It is that we get a comfort station in downtown Brooklyn that is a public comfort station, so you don't have to go into a store to relieve yourself. We were also supposed to get a park as we understood it. I'm mentioning that because those two issues have not been acted upon as per the agreement, but they have come into focus. The Willoughby Street Park that Ms. Zayla Granger reported on is no longer a park only because it is not going to be controlled by the New York City Parks Department. That parcel of land will be controlled by what I understand the Brooklyn Partnership, and EDC has contracted with the partnership to control what otherwise was supposed to be a park that had 200 parking spots under it. So I don't know how that happened, how parkland was removed from the responsibility of the Parks Department and given to a private entity. So we have to understand what all of that means, because it means that we can't call the Parks Department for any issues related to that particular parcel. The second item that I wanted to talk about that Mr. Smith spoke about is the affordable housing. And as we all know, that is a major issue, not just in our district, but in the city and in the state. What we call affordable housing is not affordable. That word is a misnomer. It has allowed developers to come into our district and create what they think is affordable housing from their financial perspective, does not address our community. We have more homeless than almost when the Depression ended in the city of New York at this particular point, and not a plan to solve it. So affordable housing, as an example, would be what would be affordable to the folks that are now occupying the hotels downtown Brooklyn through the New York City homeless program. These are folks that can pay money, they're working, they just can't afford to live in the city of New York. We have to understand how to address this issue in a much more thorough manner. So when Mr. Smith reported on 130% of affordable housing, How do you have affordable housing and 130% of in the same sentence? And it actually is meaningful. We have to actually take a look at that. That is one area in this city that is not being addressed appropriately because it is developer driven. And we are asking every developer that comes before the committee in a ULURP process to give more than what their application asks us to approve. They have to give something else more to the community, like we did achieve and 69 Adams Street. Last thing I'm going to say, Mr. Singletary, is that as a result of the negotiations, there was $1.5 million granted to School 307 in Vinegar Hill, Farragut, and $1.5 million given to the Farragut community as a result of the sale of the air rights over 69 Adams Street. That is a real community benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate those comments and that feedback. It's always important to have somebody, keep us focused on the many topics that transpire over time. So thanks for that. Any other comments under the community forum? All right, next item on the agenda is item number 9. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, good night.
Nay.
Good night.